that's what I told you earlier. My sort of opening remarks that I'm worried about things. I mean, this stuff being inflammatory and so on. Yeah. Right. And 25th. 20今日幾多號？佢呢一個你睇下，係警方澄清，佢話19號嘅時候，佢警方必須澄清，當時並沒有發生所謂人踩人的情況。我哋呢度寫咗係，佢 Police clarify that no stampede occurred during the period。佢就20號出嘅，唔知點解英文就遲啲，佢要譯咯，可能中文佢就早咗少少嚇，咁都係爭我諗係即係 overnight 咧，佢呢度23點係嘛，即係夜晚11點半呢個晏少少，但係佢係否認有咁嘅講法。仲有阿仔，呢個就係你本來咁我就呢個我就 skip 咗先嚇。我哋仲有少時間，同大家講一講先。就除咗 Cody 咧，就佢係美國人，佢來自美國嘅專業嘅急救員嚟嘅。佢就好樂意係用真樣真姓名同大家講任何嘢嘅。但係其他嘅咧就大家理解嘅，就唔係好樂意話即係完全係同大家用真名咁啦，咁就我哋第一位嘅講嘅就係總之話係急救員 A， 第二位講嘅跟住如果要講嘅話就係 B， 跟住就 A、B、C 咁樣落去，好唔好啊？嚇？唔需要變聲，聲應該 OK 嗬？聲應該 OK。我哋等多少少時間嚇。而家係正係4點啦。你認為要 photo call 係嘛？咁我哋坐第二行麻煩會唔會企起身好唔好啊？大家介唔介意？呢度咧就係我哋當晚足啱1個星期之前，星期一晚，上星期一晚大概凌晨當時彌敦道同埋碧街之間咧係發生嘅人踩人，或者你叫人跌人嘅場面，係現場嘅全部嘅6個急救員咧都喺度㗎啦。就佢哋完全係睇到晒當時嘅情況，唔係100%咧當然嚇，咁但係佢哋從自己嘅角度係都好好啊。
左右角。
好，你揸呢一個，你揸呢一個，係你揸呢個，你識聽嘅冇？你坐前少少得唔得啊？Could you sit slightly forward? Yeah, thank you.
6個係咪都係義務急救員？
全部義務。好咁今日咧係非常多謝大家嘅，因為知道今日大家都非常勞累嚇。尋日嘅區議會選舉咧，好明顯大家都諗住會贏嘅民主派，但係就冇估到咧係會贏到開巷嘅咯。咁搞到真係今日咧就大家一齊係疲於奔命嘅。咁我哋今日而家要講嘅呢個事情咧，就係啱上星期一，係足1個星期之前咧，係大概午夜嘅時間嚇，星期 期一午夜就係理大當時係發生緊非常之傷痛嘅畫面。咁但係與此同時咧，喺油麻地彌敦道嗰一帶咧亦都好多黑衫人或者係一般市民咧就聲援緊理大嘅。咁就喺碧街同埋彌敦道之間嗰度有一個人搭人嘅場面咧，我哋有急救員喺現場咧話係由6月到而家佢見過最慘痛、最令人慘不忍睹嘅一個畫面嚟嘅，就唔可以咧純粹就俾警察一句話並無此事發生咁就講完，不可能嘅。咁當然我哋本來係上星期可以出嚟同大家講嘅，咁但係上星期大家都理解，因為如果我哋喺上星期講咗嘅話咧，就恐怕咧就嗰個事發過程會惹起一啲即係比較激烈嘅情緒，我哋可能會即係。我哋呢啲內容咧，而家要講嘅內容咧係 inflammatory 咁就我又唔想即係喺選舉之前咧係有啲咩嘅枝節。咁你當然會話咁上星期唔講，又而家講，又隔咗成個星期咁啊。咁但係最緊要咧就我哋一定要喺新聞嗰度係要有一個事實嘅記錄，就千祈唔可以就咁好消閒、好悠閒咁俾警察一句過話佢喺11月19號係有寫過出嚟嘅，警方必須澄清有晒記錄嘅話，當時並沒有發生所謂人踩人的情況，英文係一模一樣嘅。嗱，呢個真係我哋首先要糾正新聞，咁先至可以清清楚楚將來喺歷史嗰度寫晒出嚟，我哋究竟當時發生咩事？呢個係第一，我哋一定最基本要求真，雖然係1星期後同大家講清講楚。而第二呢，就係警告警方。嗰晚發生咁樣嘅情況呢，主要係因為佢前後包抄，佢究竟呢個係故意嘅一個警方嘅部署，抑或係當時一個唔覺意係發生咗錯誤嘅情況，佢都唔前面唔知後面事，左手唔知右手喺度做緊乜嘢，先至搞到咁樣嘅情況嘅呢？呢個真係要警告警方，因為我哋所有嘅急救員，現場6個嘅急救員都已經而家坐咗喺度，話俾大家聽，呢個係好彩香港係比較一個好彩嘅地方有福氣。嗰晚嘅情況隨時係可以釀成天大嘅慘劇嘅。好彩嗰度嗰條路係一條冷巷咁啦係平路，唔係斜斜地。如果唔係個後果呢係不堪設想嘅。咁我首先呢就係我哋有救護員 A 就首先同我哋講一講究竟佢最初佢係最初喺現場嘅救護員嚟嘅。我哋足足有6個，其他其實都係所謂最初或者係最先呢，係相隔30秒、1分鐘，最多唔夠2分鐘嘅啫。咁但係救護員 A 呢係最先嘅一個。係。再我褪，我再褪。
咁當日啦，我哋喺油麻地近彌敦道同埋窩打老道嘅十字路口度呢，咁就有一大班嘅示威者啦，咁同埋警方嘅防線喺度對峙緊啦。咁我當日就喺嗰度做義務急救員嘅崗位咁樣啦。咁呢，到防暴警察啦同埋速龍啦，突然之間就向前跑，咁就見到佢拉咗幾個示威者啦。咁當時我同埋呢一位外籍嘅急救員呢，就企咗喺一個大廈嘅凹位度。咁呢，到後尾警方嚟到嘅時候呢，就叫我哋走啦。咁我哋就經一條橫巷啦，就一路行啦。咁行下突然之間聽到有人大叫啦，救人啊，好恐怖啊！咁我哋就即刻向前跑。咁去到呢，已經見到大約個畫面呢，係有50至60人，一層搭一層咁樣全部瞓低搭起晒。嗰個畫面大概係每個人搭到5層高啦。咁 現場咧就已經有2個消防員喺度掹緊最低層嘅人啦。咁我同外籍嘅急救員即刻幫手去拉啦。咁但係3個人咧都係唔能夠拉到最底層嗰個男仔出嚟嘅。咁跟住之後咧，我哋就試圖去拉側邊嘅人啦。咁我就拉到幾個人出嚟嘅。咁後尾就覺得咁樣落去唔係辦法啦。咁我就跑到去左手邊啦。咁就希望叫後邊嘅人後退啦。咁但係當我未跑到嘅時候咧，已經見到警方啦。咁咧警方就喝令我離開現場，唔能夠留喺度啦。如果唔係就打我啦。咁我就離開啦，然後打算翻去幫手啦咁樣。咁打算翻去幫手嘅時候呢，咁2分鐘過後呢，警方已經嚟到呢度，將所有嘅消防員同埋我哋義務急救員推開到10米外嘅範圍。而情況當中呢，佢哋仲有用胡椒噴霧啦，同埋警棍去打我哋嘅急救人員嘅。咁佢連消防員都拱開啦。咁跟住之後，就喝令所有俾我哋救咗出嚟嘅人跪低，好好咁樣接受即係佢哋嘅拘捕咁樣。如果唔係就會再打佢哋啦咁樣。咁我補充翻一點就係、我去到現場嘅時候啦，所有人都已經係一個好危急嘅情況。佢哋有人話救我，我隻手就嚟斷；有人話我隻腳斷；有人話我唞唔到氣，亦都有人大叫救我唔想死，就係咁多。
好，Cody，I need you to sit in the middle。Cody 俾一個英文嘅好明顯啦嚇，佢嘅 account 嚇。我首先要講一講就佢啱啱俾我呢張相，佢話係有朋友send 俾佢嘅。我話嗰個來源點，佢話朋友都唔知，係透過 WhatsApp 嚇。就呢個係佢嚟事發嘅時候，佢足足6尺5寸高，而佢話你睇下啲人，你睇呢個頭。呢啲嚇全部，佢呢啲頭唔係打洞嘅，呢啲頭全部係打橫嘅，足以證明嗰個疊數嗰個 layer 有佢話正話講嘅有5層6層高，就係咁樣嘅比例亦都呢個係睇到嗰個地點。Yeah, I just explained this in Chinese. You can say that again in English if you want to. Yeah.
So on the night of the stampede last Monday, I was at the intersection of Waterloo and Nathan Road. We were standing on the northwestern corner and the protesters were pushing the police to the south. At the time, the protesters were actually pushing the police back, and as a countermeasure, the police threw some multiple flashbang grenades, which landed amongst the front line. No one was sure. I think tensions were high that night, and it was unsure whether or not they'd simply heard flashbangs or gunshots. To me, it sounded like gunfire. To the other Americans I spoke with, it sounded like gunfire. It wasn't. It was flashbangs. But the possibility caused the crowds to scatter at high speed and caused the stampede to occur. So the police were on the southern side of the intersection. The protesters split all 3 ways on Waterloo Road and to the north on Nathan Road. If you go 1 block up on Nathan Road, on the left you'll see the MTR station entrance. I stood on the northwestern corner of Nathan and Waterloo with one of the other first aiders as the Raptor squad and the riot police ran by us to attempt to get back to where the protesters were. We went through a small alleyway that is parallel to Portland Street, I believe, between Portland and Nathan. As we came out of that alleyway on Pitt Street, the MTR station entrance was just to our right, and we saw the pileup that had begun to happen, or had happened. Probably 6 to 8 layers deep. As you saw in the picture, at least 6 feet, 7 feet high. The young men on the bottom of the pile at least had 600 pounds to 900 pounds of force being exerted on them. When we got in, we were the first there, and you could see that the young men on the bottom, their eyes were glazed over, they were in a lot of pain, they were gasping for breath, they were being killed by the pressure. We attempted to pull them out. Other first aiders arrived, attempted to pull them out with us. Firefighters were on the scene, also attempted to pull the children out. We probably only got 5 or 6 out, due just to the amount of pressure holding these kids in. The riot police came around the backside of the MTR station entrance, and when they arrived, they grabbed us by our vests and pushed us and pulled us away, shouting and beating their nightsticks on their shields and on the wall. One of the first aid girls was pushed and thrown to the ground. We took her back. They then proceeded to also push the firemen away and keep the firemen from rendering any aid to the young kids there. the young kids, which were all stuck in a pileup and completely unable to defend themselves, to hurt the police, to run away, to resist arrest. They were absolutely helpless. Regardless, the police, if I recall correctly, did use their batons and hit them a few times before they began mercilessly tearing them from the pileup and arresting them all one by one. That's the best I
Why
ever
do you
recall.
think the police would categorically deny that there was any stampede that night? They couldn't see, or what?
Well, of course they saw it. They caused it. It was right in front of their lines. They saw everyone away. I mean, the effect of the pileup was obvious. These were literally the same police that had just been throwing flashbangs, just been chasing everyone down the street, that later came around and pulled us away from the pile of kids there. There's no doubt in my mind the police know exactly what they did. Whether or not it was planned or whether or not it was simply an accident, I don't know. But they know what happened that night. There is no doubt of what happened that night. A common thing that happens in stampedes is you'll see the streets full of shoes that fall off people during the mad rush, and the streets had lots of missing shoes here and there. I have a friend who's a journalist who's documented that. There's no doubt there was a stampede that night. As you can see, we have lots of witnesses here.
我想問翻我哋救護員 A 咧，就警察話冇人踩人啊嘛，而佢哋嘅一大理由咧就係冇一個傷勢咧係同人踩人嘅場面有關嘅。你對佢哋咁樣嘅解釋，你有咩嘅諗法嘅？
如果警方要澄清當晚冇發生過人踩人事件啦，咁我都必須喺呢一度澄清，呢件事係一定有發生，係我親眼所目睹啦。你哋講嘅大話係會有人企出嚟做指證啦。如果你覺得因為傷勢唔嚴重，或者可能其實係你隱瞞咗傷勢，而你話冇發生過呢件事件係絕對唔正確。如果冇呢一個傷勢，只係因為香港有運氣唔發生當年蘭桂坊重演嘅事件，而唔係代表呢件事冇發生過。
好。Q&A。
介唔介意可以再描述多少少咧？即係當時你見到話50-60人即係出現一層層嗰個畫面咧，即係以你當時嘅理解係點解會出現呢一個狀況，同埋你先即係有描述到話啲人話大叫唔想死啊嗰啲咧，即係點解會出現咁嘅情況？可唔可以再加啲描述？
唔好意思，因為調位，所以唔係好聽到你嘅問題。
再詳述一次。係
啦，即係你當時見到即係50-60人即係聚集啦，即係當時點解會即係有人聚集？你以你嘅理解，當時係點解會發生即係可能對視嘅畫面，同埋即係你頭先講到話有人即係大叫唔想死啊，唞唔到氣啊，即係佢哋當時喺咩情況之下咁樣去即係作一啲即係呼救？嗰一個畫面絕對係即係首先講翻係咩情況下佢哋作出嚟個呼救啦，絕對係好似一個慘劇嘅情況下而發生呢一個呼救嘅現場啦。我哋除唔到我哋嘅防毒面具啦，因為煙霧彈瀰漫啦，左邊嘅油麻地地鐵站A1 出口個位置啦，火光滿滿啦，所以有消防員在場啦。即係然後喺一個空氣環境唔足夠嘅情況下，而發生呢一個60-70人逼埋喺冷巷度，仲要發生人踏人嘅事件，絕對係人間煉獄。因為空氣已經唔夠啦，跟住有催淚煙啦，有火嘅煙啦，亦都戴住防毒面具啦，如一步一步咁樣加劇呢一件事救援嘅難度啦，同埋傷者嘅傷勢都係好容易會去惡劣咁樣。咁我見到如果描述仔細啲嘅話，就係左手邊嘅即係被搭嘅人咧，係絕對係比較嚴重嘅，即係嗰邊幾乎係擲到有啲人已經出唔到聲啦。有人見到面部發紫啦，即係有被擲嘅人。咁而我就不斷聽到救我啦，好記得我拉一個女仔出嚟嘅時候，佢望住我嗰個樣係。好似真係佢講唔到嘢，但係佢同緊我講，我真係好唔想死，你掹我出嚟啦咁樣。而當我行埋去掹佢出嚟嘅時候，發覺比我想象中好困難，因為我自己從來都冇經歷過啦，當然咁係冇諗過我係掹唔到佢出嚟嘅，就係咁。 同 係咪因為即係上面搭嘅人都即係好重好多，所以拉唔到？
係啊，絕對係因為好重，所以即係搭住咗，所以拉唔到。我諗我掹緊個女仔係第2到第3層嘅女仔，但係都好困難。而我頭先亦都有講到啦，當我哋到達現場啦，見到消防員拉緊最底層嘅一個男仔，我哋3個都拉唔到佢出嚟，係啊，消防員都即係體力都應該有返，都大力咁樣，但係3個人都掹唔到佢出嚟。
當時點解即係警察會趕走埋消防？
我唔清楚，但係佢一嚟到嘅時候咧，連消防員佢都擁開，係啊，好記得係速龍擁開嗰個消防員，而消防員係坐咗喺地下，咩都做唔到。我唔清楚點解佢哋會推開消防員，但係呢一個決定一定係錯。如果佢覺得我哋義務急救員係會阻礙佢哋嘅工作，或者我哋會救走啲犯人嘅話，我唔覺得消防員會，所以根本推開消防員就冇必要。佢哋只係想第一時間去拉晒所有俾我哋救出嚟嘅人，叫佢哋全部面壁向牆跪低，然後如果佢哋喐嘅話就會打佢哋。嗰堆傷者仲搭緊嘅時候，我相信我眼見大約5至10分鐘都冇人理過佢哋。
想問翻呢嗰時應該有好多嘅警員係嘗試推開你哋，即係或者用警棍去驅散你，可唔可以描述多啲嘅情況，或者你哋有冇義務急救員係即係被警棍去打傷或者等等嗰個情況？
有。咁你要唔要換名？
咁就我就頭先所講嘅被警棍打傷嘅其中一位First Aid 係啦。咁當時個場景咧，就其實我去到現場，其實我想補充少少，就係嗰個恐怖嘅場面係我6月份運動開始到而家，真係經歷過最恐怖嘅一次嘅畫面，而令到我都有啲束手無策到，有啲驚恐。唔識點樣去處理，當下個感覺係淨係見到好多人頭，係全部係搭住好似屍體咁樣，係只係見到人頭，我係見唔到有人係企咗喺度。而再補充少少啦，頭先位 First Aid 都話佢用力3個人用力都拉唔到一個人出嚟，我係嘗試係喺最底層有一個只係搭住半邊身，佢話佢隻腳好痛，叫我拉佢出嚟。佢只係着住普通嘅衫，而唔係黑衣人。我都同另一位男士啦，我唔記得係咪 First Aid，因為個畫面實在有啲混亂。我同佢一齊拉嘅時候，只係佢帶住隻腳啫，我哋都拉唔到佢出嚟。係用盡好長嘅時間，我哋都拉唔到出嚟。然後突然之間背部感受到有硬物，係啦，咁咪打咗我個背脊一棍。咁我擰住面嘅時候，見到原來係一個身穿速龍制服嘅警方啦，係啦，咁我見唔到佢遺憾證，見唔到 number 嘅，咁就打咗我背脊一棍，然後好大聲呼喝我離開，叫我走，然後我話救人，點解唔俾我哋救人？救咗人先，因為現場嘅畫面係只係見到人頭不斷嘅呼叫救我，嗰個眼神其實係你問我當下已經係好驚恐啊個人，然後其實隔咗呢1個禮拜，我自己個情況瞓覺啦，我都會瞓唔得好，係啦，都會係即係有種情緒喺度嘅，亦都坦白講，因為真係實在當下我哋係想救人啫，亦都想講一樣嘢就係現場係一個鬧市油麻地嘅地方。後邊街依然係有食肆，樓上就係住宅。點解警方會假設咗在場所有人士已經係有罪，而受傷嘅情況底下唔俾我哋進行施救，亦都去阻攔咗我哋，將我哋推開，用胡椒噴霧、用警棍，係唔俾我哋救。佢講到明唔需要你哋救，但係佢哋都冇即時去做一個施救嘅工作，但係現場人士有罪定無罪，我同警方應該都不能夠即時去定性。即係我覺得呢樣嘢係人道嘅工作，我哋係應該要救人行先，而不是以拉人為主。係 呢樣係我想今日點解都會企出嚟去講述呢件事，但係都好唔好意思同大家抱歉，我哋不能夠即係以真面目去同大家去見面，就係我哋都好擔心，我哋日後再出嚟嘅時候，會唔會救援工作受到更大嘅阻撓同埋針對？
可唔可以講下咧？即係你講到話有一啲時候，即係警方係拉人為先，即係之後可能係咪隔咗一段時間，或者隔咗幾耐，其實佢先可能去處理即係人搭人呢個事件嘅問題？
嗱，因為其實當下我個情況已經係俾佢哋打完之後再製造一啲嘅叫做武力嘅適當嘅武力嘅驅趕啦。咁嗰時個場面咧，我自己處於都比較混亂，就係佢不斷就拱開我啦，然後再拖行啦，再打多第二棍。咁我唔即係嗰一下其實擾攘咗，你問我都有成10分鐘有㗎啦，但係我都唔見有現場嘅警方去做一啲嘅救援嘅工作。然後我都被即係我同其他 first aider 都被趕離現場，咁我哋都唔見到，即使可能有其他嘅救援啦，或者係有警方去做一啲嘅救援咧，因為個環境都比較暗咯。
我想補充一句咧，就我哋呢幾位嘅我哋係職業嘅嚇，佢哋全部有牌嘅救護員咧，佢哋咁介懷，要想將呢件事咧係一定要公諸於世咧，就係留意到當晚呢個情況太混亂，同埋嗰個範圍係太大，就有關零零舍舍呢個逼街呢一度嘅人踩人嘅場面咧。有啲硬照嚇，有呢一類咁嘅硬照，但係冇一個人影到影片啊，係冇影片啊，佢哋就好擔心呢個咁恐怖嘅畫面喺香港歷史上咧就係冇咗啊！警方話冇嘛，呢件事咪冇發生咯，咁就希望大家一齊我哋將呢個事實咧係擺翻入去香港嘅新聞成為日後嘅歷史。
講下咧，即係喺你一般你處理開傷者嘅時候啦，你覺得正常情況應該首先做啲乜嘢啦？而警方第一時間佢嘅反應係咪有違人道精神咧？
其實咁多次嘅即係成6月到而家嘅運動以嚟，其實我都係一直都會喺現場度做一個嘅義務急救員嘅工作。咁其實好多時都好坦白，我自己今日出席之前都好多説話想同透過傳媒俾市民知道，其實我哋出嚟受到好大嘅阻撓，就係警方嘅一啲嘅人道救援嘅阻撓。譬如有人受傷嘅時候，佢哋都唔會俾我哋救，亦將我哋去驅趕離現場，亦都嘗試過，我自己啦，本人亦都試過，警方用警棍咁樣去威嚇我哋，要我哋離開，胡椒噴霧。甚至胡椒彈槍，我係近距離10米係受過開過一槍嘅，係啦。但係嗰一刻我係只係做緊一個救援嘅工作，只係想將街坊去拉離現場，因為佢唔係一個示威者，因為佢就係我身邊企喺度嘅一個旁觀者。
好，差唔多啦，嗬。
我想問下其他幾位急救員有啲補充？
你補充。
我答一答翻頭先呢位記者話，你如果警方在場，佢應該第一時間做啲咩？我覺得即係我個人認為，覺得其實如果喺在場見到個現場發生嘅時候咧，警察應該係要協助我哋一齊去救咗啲傷者出嚟先，因為大家都知道，如果唞唔到氣幾耐就即係好危險啦。但係當警察到咗嘅時候，啱啱我自己講緊我自己啦，我自己都即係好盡力咁樣拉緊第二個傷者出嚟嘅時候，啱啱拉到第二個傷者出嚟嘅時候咧，速龍就喺我後邊一嚟到，我扶低咗個傷者坐低，佢就一棍毆咗落去嗰個傷者隻腳嗰度，然後準備起棍第二下打落去。即係我會覺得，即係警察佢唔單止冇一齊去協助救護傷者，同埋佢係阻緩咗我哋嘅救護咯。咁呢個係好唔人道嘅救援嘅方法咯，我覺得。
好。
頭先我想問，即係因為個外籍嘅救護員有講過，即係有幾高度嘅搭到幾高，我想問下，即係你哋咧去睇，即係搭咗幾層，其實係咪都有可能一個成年男人咁高定？
有，絕對有。我當時其實都見到個 Cody 喺，即係呢個外籍嘅救護員喺在場，其實搭嗰個高度其實真係同佢差唔多高，即係我就見到好彩咧，就係我喺嗰班傷者嘅右手邊，咁佢哋係下邊嗰度咧都搭咗成差唔多係4層，然後有一個男傷者，佢比較大隻少少嘅，佢就即係好奮不顧身咁樣去擋住後邊啲人頂住，但係其實佢嘅後邊嗰個高度仲搭緊2、3層，真係足夠有佢咁高度嘅高度咯，咁樣。
我想問咧，即係警方驅趕你哋時候，其實有冇話即係阻礙咗幾多分鐘，即係或者大概幾多時間嘅救護時間或者等等？
我諗由警察到場，我唔知道佢驅趕我哋嘅期間，我諗大約都有5、6分鐘係冇人理嗰班傷者咯。即係我自己眼見，即係警察到場，佢哋推走咗我哋，然後阻住班消防員之後，佢哋就係即係設起個封鎖線，期間係完全冇救過任何一個傷者出嚟咯。我自己眼見。
跟住就將某一啲嘅傷者就要求佢哋跪地啊，定係要求你
嗰啲係
先
？sorry 講一次。
即係頭先講到話要求某啲人士去跪地啦，咁嗰啲係拉咗出嚟嘅傷者啊，定係喺驅趕完你哋之後，即係話你哋被推跌啊嘛，有人咁之後都同樣要被跪，即係要求跪低。
我自己眼見係我哋救咗嘅傷者出到嚟，警察一到場就要求佢哋跪喺地下度，咁跟住然後就驅趕咗我哋去10米以外嘅轉角位，就唔俾我哋再埋嘅，咁所以之後嘅時候我哋就睇唔到咯。
我想問咧，即係警察話5至6分鐘之後先開始有啲救援啦，咁其實係咪錯過咗嗰個黃金嘅時間？
當然啦，
即係其實最理想嘅話應該係幾多啦？同埋如果錯過咗咁，佢哋面臨嘅係啲咩嘢？
其實最理想係幾多時間，我答你唔到，因為其實都會因每一個傷者嘅傷勢而定。但係如果當時如果俾我哋嘅急救人員喺在場嘅話，萬一有傷者即係可能發生唞唔到氣嘅，其實我哋在場嘅話可以幫助即係 CPR 或者係即係做其他嘅即係救援方法咯。
想問一問啊 Cody 咧，可唔可以幫就 Miss Mo 翻嚟下，就係即係佢自己有冇喺其他地方咧做過呢啲救援嘅工作？咁又可唔可以比較下其實香港而家呢啲咁樣嘅衝突嘅情況咧，其實同外國即係有冇一啲可以比較下？即係香港嚴重啲定佢有冇去過其他地方，即係可以類比一下咁樣
？Cody, it's a question for you. Judging by your own personal professional experience out there about first aid, what's been happening to Hong Kong, in Hong Kong? Is it relatively mild, or it's all about the same, or is it actually even worse in Hong Kong? What's your take on the Hong Kong situation?
In general, or in comparison to a certain
in general, or in particular this Pitt Street scenario? Yeah?
Well, I've been here since November 1st, so it's definitely escalated since then. It was relatively calm compared to now when we first arrived, but with the start of the university seizures, things definitely picked up, as we saw Monday night. In general, what I've seen here has been, I mean, it's very sad what Hong Kong is going through, but at the same time, it's brought people together in an absolutely amazing way and made people realize what the cost of freedom really can be and just what they have to do to protect it and the responsibility that comes with being free. And just like we probably do in America, sometimes you forget that, and then your liberties begin to slip away, and next thing you know, it's too late. As Hong Kong is seeing, it's too late to really have a peaceful resolution that requires these protests.
But you wouldn't really want to compare the brutality, the severity of the situation. Whether it's
brutality of the
Hong
police
Kong.
is it's absolutely horrible to see and to witness. And you know, we came expecting to deal with tear gas and occasional cuts and bruises, and now people are really getting severely injured. I mean, in addition, we now see a pretty high chance that a live round could be used and someone could be shot or killed, and the types of cases you might deal with on the street are far beyond the qualifications of most first aiders, because we all have basic first aid training. We're not trained to deal with gunshot wounds and such, but it's turning more and more into an actual battlefield than simply a street protest.
May I ask, have you joined any of the mass protests or rescue before in America? Have you
In America, no.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, but also I would like to ask, just now when you mentioned about the flashbang, can you mention more about that? How could you hear, or how the situation is that?
It's quite loud, so a flashbang grenade is meant to disperse the crowd. It emits both a very bright flash of light and also a very loud bang, which sounds very, very similar to a gunshot. So when the police began to have to retreat because the protesters were pushing them back, they threw these flashbangs to disperse the crowd. Now, I'm not trained in crowd control techniques, but my understanding would be you throw these near the crowd so that they frighten individuals and cause them to run. These were thrown directly at the front line. And another thing, the police saying that there was no stampede, not only did they cause it through those flashbangs and see it with their own eyes, unless they're absolutely blind, they continued to provoke it, because as the protesters ran, you could see the police running after them, firing tear gas as they ran. And tear gas obviously is meant to be fired near a crowd, and the gas goes into the crowd and disperses the crowd through the unpleasant effects of the gas itself. But what we see now is the police using these tear gas capsules as a projectile in itself. And they were firing them at the protesters, at these young people as they were running away.
Do you remember after the police shooting about the flashbang, and then they immediately run after the protesters and also with the tear gas?
Yes.
Could you explain the sequence after how many flashbangs and then the tear gas, or they run after them?
How many actual flashbangs were thrown, I don't know. Each one bangs multiple times. So I was standing at the...
About how long?
It's like a firecracker. It's rather rapid. So those were thrown, and as soon as they began to go off, you saw everyone scatter and begin to run. And as soon as they ran, the police didn't wait. The police charged as soon as those flashbangs went off. So the police, as the protesters were charging, the police were running after them, firing tear gas. In a matter of seconds, less than a minute, to be sure.
But do you think in a minute the police use flashbang and then they run after them and using tear gas is reasonable or not at that situation? Because as we all know, between Payne Street and also the Nathan Road, that would be a narrow alley, right?
Yes.
Do you think it's reasonable to use such short flashbang, run after them, and also tear gas in a short period of time and a short distance? Do you think it's reasonable?
I haven't seen very much here that I consider reasonable when it comes to what the police have done, to be quite honest. The police were being pushed back by the protesters, and the protesters were using Molotovs. So from a purely tactical standpoint, I suppose it does make sense what the police did, but from a moral standpoint, it is inexcusable.
Okay. 好，唔該晒，唔該晒。唔講㗎，我俾你知。嚇？全部都係 license 嘅。可唔可以影多張相我話？They'd like to have just one more photo for yeah。係咯。女坐嗰邊。係咯，就咁上下啦嚇，咁上下啦嚇。咁當然亦都拜託大家再有嗰啲警方記者會，如果你哋繼續採訪嘅話，唔該再問一問佢哋同埋嗰個傷。